guys, welcome back to The Holistic Hottie, a soul-centered podcast where we tackle raw conversations with intention and authenticity. Today we'll be diving into grief, what it is, what it isn't, how to handle it, and how to ground ourselves while riding the waves of its many different complexities. Today with me I have Jessica. She and I connected on social media. She runs her own holistic brand as well. You can find her on Instagram and TikTok, Mother Soul. She does herbal teas and she has pop-ups at different farmers markets. And she's also incorporating different ways of healing and spiritual work to get her through her next chapter of life. Hot, healed, and high vibe. Let's get into it. Grief is defined as a deeply immense emotion of sorrow, typically associated with the passing of a loved one, but not always. This can come up in different forms, such as mourning past versions of ourselves, maybe mourning a relationship or missed opportunities. Today, specifically, we're going to be tapping into how to deal with the grief of losing a loved one. Some may be unfamiliar with this feeling unless they've personally experienced it themselves. And as much as we try to empathize with others and try to put ourselves in their shoes, it may be tough to experience that if we haven't dealt with it firsthand. So today we're going to unpack how we can support others during their grieving process and how to make them feel not only heard but seen. In which ways have you experienced grief?
I would say my first big major impact of grief was definitely the loss of my brother. That happened in May of 2023. Losing a younger sibling, it just definitely just hits you really hard. So that definitely was a whole new experience for me and very heavy and very challenging. Of course, I'm able to navigate it better now and obviously sit here and talk about it.
Right.
So I'm like grateful for that. But it's definitely been, you know,
A roller coaster.
Yeah, a roller coaster for sure.
Did you ever think you would get to a place where you could actually sit and have a conversation like this?
I definitely have been avoidant, but I knew that I wanted to change so many things, especially because of it. So it just helped me really connect with myself in a different way, tap into my emotions and learn to sit in it, because with the loss of my brother, there was just so many other things in the like deeper layers that I didn't realize. And when I was going through my healing journeys and like seeking different healing therapies, there was just so much unfolding. And so it definitely helped me grow in a different way. And I mean, I was working towards this, so I knew
this
it was coming.
Like the end goal.
Yes, this was the end goal. This was the end goal.
That's interesting that you brought up how like it had so many different layers, because when we hear grief, we think like, oh, we're sad and we're mourning, and this is something we're going to carry on throughout the rest of our lives, which is true, but you said it brought up so many other things that you had to work on while also processing the grieving. What was the toughest of the process?
I think definitely the toughest was really just allowing myself to feel, especially in the Latina household. My family would just brush feelings aside and just not really be open about it. And so I naturally, like even into my adult years, was very avoidant and hyper fixated on everything else. Let me stay busy, let me stay distracted. And you know,
because as soon as you slow down, that's when it all hits you.
Yeah, that's when it all hits you. And I was just like, okay, I need to face this, because then later on it's just gonna show up in different ways.
I read a book actually called The Body Keeps Score. Have you heard of it?
Yes, I have heard of it. I've been wanting to read it, but I know like the gist of it, like what it's about.
What you were just speaking about is something that they emphasize in the book with like scientific research and all this psychological based research. But when we don't handle certain things, like sure, it's great to like compartmentalize and pack it away for now, but when we don't handle things, it like affects our body physically. That can look like disease or illness, or maybe like lashing out on people. Like if you're having a super bad day and nobody knows why, so those are inner like monologues that you struggle with. When you say sit with it, what was the most comforting thing for you to do? Was that just to cry it out for a short period of time and then get on with your day, or was it like I'm taking this whole day or maybe a few days to sit with myself and then get back into the groove?
I think when I first like started actually truly sitting with it, I was just crying like all day. Like my body was like, it completely shut down.
Yeah.
It was just like so many emotions, very chaotic. So I would just like let myself release all of that. And then also like just seeking like healing therapies and tap into meditation. And when it first initially happened, I was still working on really talking about it with other people, but I was just trying to create like a safe space for myself to actually like
get out and express that. Yeah, I feel that, because it all starts within yourself. Because if you don't have that safety within yourself, how are you going to have these type of conversations and be able to speak about it? I know you also mentioned too that especially like in like Latino culture, like it's very rare that you guys talk about your feelings and everyone kind of brushes it under the rug.
Yeah.
When your brother passed, did that change amongst your family, or was it still like nobody really spoke about the elephant in the room?
Okay, so it's kind of complicated because my family was already very divided, very separated, and there was already issues with my brother prior to his passing. Him and I had a disagreement, but that year was like we were finally like messaging each other and like reconnecting, but there was just still tension between my mom's side of the family. I really have not had any contact with them. I do have a relationship with my mom and dad. It was very difficult for them. They were very absent in our life, in our childhood, and so, you know, when they were finally like turning things around and ready to build a relationship, this happened. And so it was hard on both of them. Yeah, my dad definitely went and was very distant, and then my mom, she was actually trying to get me to like, you know,
open up and talk about things.
Yeah, because you know, during that time I was living with her, and so she would see me like I was
You were distraught.
Yeah, I was distraught. I was not eating. I was like, I had dropped a lot of weight. Like you could tell, like no energy levels. Like I felt like I was a ghost. That's how I felt. Yeah.
That's important to mention too, because that's how grief can show up, like loss of appetite, loss of energy, maybe interest in things that you once were like really ecstatic about. Now you have no interest and stuff like that. People carry certain emotions with them throughout the day, whether we recognize it or not, which is why I love the idea of Sonder. Sonder is the feeling or like the realization that everyone's lives are as complex as our own. So like just for like a brief example, it'll be like you, me, and maybe like two other people here. Maybe you're grieving. I'm having a good day because I got a promotion at work. She just got out of a relationship. She just got her car towed. Like we all have our own different things going on. So I think that's why it's really important to empathize with one another. Oftentimes when we're dealing with grief, we can become versions of ourselves that is not only unrecognizable to ourselves, but others around us. This can look like isolation, intense emotional shifts, losing interest in things that you once found exciting, maybe a change in appetite. Another key thing to remember too is that it also can affect our brain and give us a sense of brain fog, where we're physically present, but maybe in our head and emotionally we're just not present there, and it's just a wave of nothingness. What changed for you when you began grieving your brother?
I turned into a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like initial, right? You're kind of in shock. No, you're not kind of, you're in shock.
Completely in shock.
Yeah, completely in shock. You know, nervous system majorly dysregulated, and there is even like some kind, you know, numbness to reality. I didn't know what to do really. When you lose a loved one, naturally you remember every memory you have with them, you know. So I was just sitting there with all these memories, how our childhood was, and you know, like I had guilt and resentment, and I was, you know, angry, frustrated, because, you know, I thought I had time. I thought I would be able to connect with my brother again, and, you know, we would have a relationship. We would be close again like we were when we were younger. So, you know, when he was gone, I was just sitting with all of that, and it definitely took me a while to just really make peace with myself and forgive myself.
What emotion during your grieving process was the hardest to recognize and navigate? Because I think it was such a good point that you brought up. You were feeling resentment, anger, sadness, like you literally encapsulate like 10,000 different emotions under this umbrella of grief. So it's like, how do you handle each one? Like, do you just take it all in a chunk and just deal with it, or are you breaking it up?
I think taking it all in chunk.
Yeah. Let's just get this over with. I'm just gonna handle it all at once.
Yeah, I think the main one was guilt. I should have reached out. Like, I should have just showed up and, you know, not be stubborn, let go of the pride, let go of all the past, and, you know, just make more of an effort to be present. That one was the one that was like eating away at me. But, you know, I feel like naturally I've always had gifts and have been spiritually connected, even though, you know, there are many times I didn't know how to really access that. It just kind of happens, right?
Right.
And he had passed a couple months later. Like, I was receiving really vivid dreams, and he would appear and we would have insane conversations, and it was all so vivid and clear to me that it was giving me a sense of peace and and just letting me know that not only I was forgiving myself, but he was also forgiving me. And, you know, the love was always there. And I know if the situation was vice versa, like, he would feel the same way 1,000%.
Right, and you wouldn't want him to feel guilty or feel like at fault, like he should have reached out or he should have been more present as well.
Yeah.
Grief is not linear. It comes in different waves, cycles, and there's no handbook given to us to show us how to appropriately handle these emotions as we carry them throughout life. The best we can do is learn how to navigate this process with certain tools that we learn, and to be gentle with ourselves throughout the process, as this is an ever-changing cycle that we're going to carry with us throughout life. Life is about duality. We carry the light, the darkness, the happiness, and the sadness, but there is a balance to it all. Grief isn't something that goes away. It's something that you learn to carry with you throughout the rest of your life. How do you handle the duality of numbness and the overwhelming reality of losing your brother?
There is this numbness, right? Like, you don't really have the sense of reality. You're numb and shock, and then reality bleeds through.
When did that reality set in for you? Because I know it's different from everyone. Some people it takes years, sometimes it comes quicker.
I feel like it did hit me pretty quick. I would say like a couple months after, especially when I started like getting those dreams. It was just like, okay, yeah, like he really is
no longer here.
Yeah. You know, I always would go back and forth and convince myself, okay, I've made peace, and then I'm good, and then the next day I'm like spiraling out and like crying in the kitchen while making food or something.
Like it creeps up on you like at random moments, huh?
Yeah, it does. It creeps on. It definitely. Even now, like, even when I see like little like siblings, especially my little two cousins, like I see them play, they're so similar to my brother and I. And so sometimes I get emotional. Like, I'll have to like step away because I'll just start like crying.
Do you find like beauty in that though?
Yes, I do.
Sweet.
I cherish it so much too. Like, appreciating life a lot more now. I've always struggled with depression and just, you know, had more of a dim light, and my brother, I feel like he was always just full of light. Backtracking a little bit, that day when he passed, that morning, I was already going through a hard time and just like really down and super depressed and just like struggling with my mental health and all of those things. And I had opened up to my mom like that, you know, I really just like don't want to be around anymore. And, you know, things are just like overwhelming for me. Like, I honestly don't know what to do. And so then, you know, once we got the news, it was even harder because I just told my mom that, and then that happened. And then I was just like, you know, even more guilty. And that's what played more into my guilt, is like not being appreciative of life. But now it's like a new lens for me, and just like really working towards healing and facing my depression and like understanding it and coping in healthier ways and not being toxic and unhinged.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point too, to like be able to heal, you have to recognize your patterns and you have to actually acknowledge and address them at hand. And I feel like a lot of us don't do that, and that's why we're kind of stuck in the cycle of like repetitive behaviors, and then we can't understand why certain things are happening to us or why we're put in the same exact situation. And I'm a big believer in like, you will learn the same lesson over and over again until you actually decide to change or make different whatever, you know, to get the result that you want. So I think that's a beautiful thing that like it gave you, unfortunately, no, like as tragic as it was, it gave you like a new sense of life and, like you said, a new lens and perspective on things.
A new sense of self. Like it forced me to completely actually look at myself, and I'm like, holy shit, like I got issues. They're pretty big issues. I cannot avoid this. And you know, I had entered a relationship while I was grieving, and all those patterns and all these cycles, you know, showed up in my relationship, and that even pushed me more like, I need to address this. I cannot just brush it under the rug. I cannot just say it is what it is. It's who I am. You know,
that's
cliche.
how it's gonna be.
Yeah, that's how it is. And that's like, you know, that's what my family says the same, because they ride that so hard, and it's like, no, it's not what it is. Like, you know, you are in control of your reality, and if you want to be better, like, healing is possible.
I agree. It all starts with yourself, because just to go like on a tangent, I see like all the time people are put in these same situations, whether it's like dating or friends or their own personal growth, and they're always so confused why they're stunted, and it's like so difficult for them to like sit with themselves and like look at themselves in the mirror and actually recognize the different things within you that are causing these situations and these outcomes, and it's really hard. And sometimes we can recognize that ourselves and get to it, but sometimes it takes different circumstances to pull that out of us. Do you have any triggers that remind you of your brother?
Peruvian food. He always loved making like spaghetti, and we have a dish called papa a la huancaína. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but he loved making that, and that was like his favorite thing. So every time I eat it, like naturally I just think of him. It would be like also like just like characteristics in people. He had a like major sense of humor, so when, you know, I'm like people like make me laugh or whatever, it's like that same like comfort space.
A little reminiscent.
Yeah.
What do you wish more people knew about grief?
That it is a long process.
There's no timestamp for it.
There is no timestamp for it. And like you said earlier, like there is no handbook. I think it is important, like if you know someone that's grieving, to really check in with them and not like on a superficial level, like, you know, actually see how they're doing, because I feel like during my grieving process in the beginning, I was alone in a lot of it, and it was harder, and I just so desperately wanted to just talk to someone and just remember him and like speak about it. It was hard to do that with my mom, because she was just like in her own grieving process, and that alone was already super heavy. And there was only so much that I could take. I think seeking like healing therapies definitely
like external
helps.
Services and stuff.
It definitely helps. Like I got like limpiezas and stuff, and I would feel good. So I know you mentioned too that your mom was going through her own separate process. You guys were obviously grieving the loss of the same person, but she was grieving the loss of a son, you're grieving the loss of a brother. Do you feel that maybe it pulled you guys further away or closer together? It pulled us further away. But it was positive that it happened that way. She needed her own journey.
To navigate it on her own.
And you know, like I shared before, like on our call, that you know, my mom had her own upcoming own personal struggle, own habits that she was trying to break. When this all happened, she really was taking time to sit with herself, reflect, and she turned her whole life around. She became sober. She was into her Bible services.
Yeah, those are all great and important things.
Yeah, you know, I don't really go to church, but I am a spiritual person.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, if this is working for her, then I obviously am gonna support that. But I needed to keep my distance because, you know, over the years, I did have trust issues. I need to protect my peace and let her, you know, write it out and see where she goes. And, you know, now she's completely different, like takes care of her space, is taking care of herself, like working towards her health, and she sends me voice memos every morning. Yeah.
That's really important though, because I've had people that are close to me who have lost someone and it completely like breaks the family apart. Like they've gone to court to fight over like properties and investments, and it really can divide people a lot. And it's just so unexpected what can happen when you lose a loved one. I haven't experienced it yet. I know it's gonna come up, you know, that's the circle of life and I'll handle it once it gets there. So I empathize with you, but I can't fully understand what you have dealt with. But I just know from what I've seen and like my loved ones who've experienced it, like it is a journey and it is so different from one day to the next. Like you never know what's gonna arise. That's so beautiful that like the passing of your brother just brought a lot of like fruitfulness, like with you and with your mom. Because there's just, I'm one of those people that just believes like there's always like beauty in the madness, no matter what the circumstances. I'm sure it took a while to get here and I know it changes every day, but you just have such a great grasp and reflection on like the process of grief. And like a lot of people, whether it be years after the event happened or whatever, can't like sit here and do this. Also, as we spoke about different tools that we can use to help us through a grieving journey, I mentioned to Jessica if she had any tools that she wanted to share or things that she wished people knew about dealing with a grieving process, and she had some things that she felt that would be insightful for other people to kind of acknowledge on their own journey.
Another way that has helped me cope and get through my process is definitely writing and just tapping in to my emotions and when I'm feeling it to actually just start writing. So like I said, you know, grief comes in emotions and waves. There's days where, you know, it hits you again. And so I feel like lately in my life, I've been reaching so many different milestones, and naturally I'm like, you know, I wish my brother was here to see this. So in my journal, I wrote about how today was my brother. I thought about the milestone I'm reaching. One I wish he were here to witness. I wanted him to see my light, to see who I truly am becoming. And maybe this is part of it too, honoring the ache while still choosing to grow. I'm becoming who I always knew I could be, but becoming also means grieving. Some days I carry light, some days I carry loss. Both are true. Maybe healing isn't quiet, maybe it's learning how to hold both the ache and the becoming in the same breath.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that. First of all, that was very vulnerable to share, so I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's so beautiful that you're like honoring the fact that you wish your brother was here, and although he isn't, you're still, like you said, bringing in his legacy about being the light and the happiness in the room. And I love that you also share the duality of like, I can hold grief and also be healing and becoming of myself all on the same on the same note. So I think that's beautiful, and I think more people should tap into journaling too, because there's also research that shows that when we have all those thoughts in our head and they're very like messy and scrambled, when we just get it out, whether that's writing on paper or going in your phone, however that looks like to you, maybe even like a video, there's so much release that comes out when we just like let it all go. So I think that's a huge thing, just let it out. Don't compartmentalize, because we spoke about earlier it coming out in illnesses and diseases and different emotions that you don't want to deal with on hand.
High cortisol, inflammation.
Yes, all of that. Our body, the physicality of our body and our mental and our spiritual are really all in tune. So if one of them is off, you're going to see it in one way or the other.
Yeah. And also just remembering that thoughts aren't true.
Yes. No, they're not. They say you're supposed to let your intrusive thoughts, your negative ones, pass by like as if it were a train and you're just on to your next stop. So this is not your stop. You don't need to sit here and reminisce and resonate with these certain negative emotions. You're supposed to just keep letting them ride by. When the good one comes, that's when you hop on the train. That is your stop to go. In today's episode, we shared what it truly means to embody grief and carry it with us throughout the rest of our lives. Grief is not an emotion that has to control your life, but rather sits with you as you discover the different layers and complexities and learn how to deal with it. Some days may look darker than others, like Jessica spoke about earlier, but as she mentioned in her journal entry, she's learning how to carry both of those emotions with her as she is still becoming on her journey of healing. With some of the tips that we mentioned today, like journaling, maybe talking to a friend, tapping back into your own body and regulating your nervous system, these are tools that are going to help you learn how to navigate this throughout the future and maybe in your present too, because I know Jessica mentioned that the biggest lesson she took from all of this was to be present, because life is very fragile and it is very short. And I think the overall message of all of this is that there is so much beauty in life, and they say like your life really begins when you really realize that you only have one. If I could leave you with food for thought today, it's to remain present and know that the emotions that you carry with you don't have to be forever, but there is a way to navigate them without letting them override your daily life. I also wanted to thank Jessica for being actually my first outside guest of my personal circle. I'm so glad our paths crossed and we were able to network and get this type of information out on the podcast. I feel like these are the heavier subjects that no one really wants to touch, so I really applaud you and I thank you a lot for using this as a safe space to express your vulnerability, because it is really important to not only you, but all these other people that may be experiencing the same things that you are.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'm so honored, and I am so glad I stepped out of my comfort zone.
Yay! Well, I stepped out of my comfort zone too. I was so nervous because it's been all my loved ones, which is awesome, and I love that support. But if I want to grow, I got to network and stuff like that. So thank you for being my trial run, and you did great. And this is going to be an awesome episode. I can't wait to
I'm
publish
excited.
it.
Yes.
And until next time, bye.